On the prosperous mainland of Kyushu, at the end of the mountain range of the southern region, there is a mystical place. Only monks from one of the 5 clans who have mastered the foundation period and above can easily enter and exit these places. For example, our main character named Lu Chuan, who is also a time traveler. He is a student of one of the strongest Lanyu clans, and it would seem that now he is demonstrating simply incredible sword skills. But in fact, he is cleaning up with the help of his broom, completing his next task to become stronger. In total, our boy has been traveling around the new world for 2 whole years, and has already managed to get comfortable here. Fortunately, Lu Chuan has an assistant in the form of a system panel that helps him navigate here, and also gives him various tasks to become stronger. Our main character has just completed the next task and removed all the garbage, so he was given a little character experience. Only by gaining experience can he improve. The system informs him that now the hero has enough experience to move to the next level. In this world, there are no restrictions on leveling up, but at the same time, he has to carefully monitor the rules and conditions for completing tasks. The only strange thing is that despite the level of pumping of our boy, the level of his cultivation is pumping up much more slowly. Now he only has the 4th level of ki purification. But this was not so important, because the system panel displays the boy's real combat power. During the time Lu Chuan has been in this world, he has managed to make an incredible breakthrough and level up quite a lot, but he clearly lacks daily tasks alone. The boy needed to level up at least 7 more levels. If he doesn't do this, then we can assume that all his efforts are pointless because he won't be able to break through to the next stage. Suddenly, our main character is distracted by a loud cry that demands an immediate return because it is time for Lu Chuan to start cooking. Of course, our main character, with the speed of a flash, went to his mistress to prepare food for her, or she would simply kick him out of the house. On the way back, our boy was thinking about what his mistress would like for lunch this time. Suddenly, he stops, remembering that he forgot something, and throws several projectiles into the trees. Several seals appear in front of him, and the system happily reports that he has completed his daily formation training and gained quite a lot of hero experience. Suddenly, a girl in a white cloak appears behind him and says that her student has grown, his attacks have noticeably improved during training. This beautiful lady's name was Liu Muwan, and she was an elder. Although the girl was amazed that the main character had improved his skills so much, she could not understand from whom he was going to defend himself in the Lanyu clan. Suddenly, the main character puts on his most serious face and tells her stories of how over the last 1500 years, their clan has been attacked many times. The boy scared his mentor, and she told him to continue studying the formation. But as if a real mother, she told our boy never to get into trouble. Of course, he has no choice but to agree. She is very worried about the main character, because if he dies for some reason, she will have absolutely no students left. Lu Chuan just smiles and says that the mentor should not worry about him. He will train the formation so that no incidents happen. In his thoughts, he thought that his mentor was simply amazing, but sometimes she worries too much about him. Realizing that she didn't need to worry now, she asked her student to quickly start cooking. He just asked her about her wishes in food, what she would like to try today, maybe hogo or some kind of food on a skewer. She thought and said that it was quite hot now, and therefore she would like to eat some light food, but the main character did not understand what he needed to cook. Lu Chuan noticed that the girl was very unwell, and finally the moment had come when he could show his medical abilities and help his mentor. He took the girl by the hand and asked why she felt this way, thinking that she had been poisoned. But Liu Muwan asked him not to worry too much, because everything was fine with her. In her thoughts, the mentor thought that she needed to hide her illness better because the main character was too attentive. The boy just started looking up because there was a notification that the main character had completed a medical task and gained experience. He managed to complete 2 tasks at once in a day, but the girl couldn't understand why the hell Lu Chuan was just staring at the ceiling. The main character asked the girl to take anti-poisoning pills because she might get worse, but she began to deny it, saying that she just had a slight fever. But suddenly he just starts shouting that you can't joke with your health and that just in case the girl should take medicine, with this he puts the lady into a stupor. The boy puts various test tubes on the table and talks about different medicines. Some of them can relieve paralysis and others can remove snake venom. The lady clearly felt uncomfortable with what she had just heard. Lu Chuan is thinking about preparing a sweet-tasting pill for the girl so that she won't be so disgusted with drinking it. She is clearly impressed that the main character treats her so attentively and asks that the tablet be peach-flavored. The system reports that the next task has been completed because the boy has just received the respect of his mentor. And finally, the pills were ready. And handing them to his mistress, the boy said that they would definitely help remove all the negative things that were in her body. The lady says that it seems to her that sometimes the main character acts as a mentor, But Lu Chuan says that she is inventing too much for herself. It was already late, and so he is going to start preparing dinner. Night had already fallen, and while our boy was preparing food, he thought that if one day his mentor had not saved his life, he would have long since gone to the next world. There are many ways to complete tasks, but the main character wants to show as much respect as possible for his master. The boy brought her another culinary masterpiece, saying that she was entitled to a special diet, and she began to praise the main character because his cooking skills were only getting better every time. He was pleased that the lady liked his food, and Lu Chuan remembers that before the lady ate absolutely nothing, because for masters like her, food is absolutely not important in order to live. Suddenly, the system reports that the main character received maximum respect from the mentor, and now he is gaining a lot of experience. It seems that Liu Muat was pleased with today's dinner. He thought that his skill was not in vain because she succumbed to the spell from the textbook, The Basics of True Aromas. He reminds her that the girl has a lot of dirty things in her room that would be nice to put in the wash. Of course, she agrees to his proposal. But suddenly she realizes what task she has entrusted to the boy, and spitting out the food tries to stop him as quickly as possible. She suddenly remembered that the main character had worked hard enough today, and now he could go rest. But the boy thought that the lady was also tired, and she could calmly entrust him with such work. In fact, washing brings him 100 experience points, and he cannot refuse such generosity. The mistress began to take things away from him, saying that she did not want him to touch them, but he needed experience too much, and the boy asked her to entrust him with such a simple job. But suddenly she starts screaming and saying that the boy is too stupid and cannot understand the orders of his mentor. The main character thinks that the mentor is too attentive to her things. If she doesn't want him to get close to the laundry so much, then he won't do it. At the beginning of the next chapter, the guy was already lying on the ground with a bunch of bruises on his head, not understanding why the girl was behaving so strangely, because she belongs to the era of the Golden Core, and she is already over 100 years old. Then why is she so embarrassed about doing laundry? Be that as it may, the mistress orders him never to come close to her personal belongings. She will do the laundry herself. Suddenly she noticed the dissatisfied face of the main character and could not believe that her refusal upset him so much. But in fact, he was offended for the experience that he did not receive. The lady decides to tell the main character that there are many beautiful women in the world, and in 2 or 3 years he will also go out into the world where he will look for his soulmate. Lu Chuan was a little shocked by his mentor's words, thinking that she was going to help him choose a mate. He begins to tell her that he is a real Sigma, and he only cares about his improvement. There can be no talk of any couple. The girl simply agreed because the light from the main character blinded her eyes. Moreover, if he finds a mate, he will no longer be able to carry out the instructions of his mentor, and he cannot refuse such an opportunity to level up, in which case the girl invites him to begin developing his cultivator skills. Her student was almost perfect in all areas, be it fencing or alchemy, but there was only one problem. The main character's cultivation skills were too difficult, and in 4 years he was only at the 4th level of key purification. If the boy continues in the same spirit, then maybe in 100 years he will be able to achieve success. The main character asked the mentor not to worry about him so much. Of course, his progress is not as good as the mistress's was in his youth, but in the future he will definitely succeed, and he will become an excellent cultivator. But the mentor was scared because she didn't want such a talent to be wasted. She simply couldn't watch the boy gradually grow old and die. The guy asks her not to look at him with such an expression on her face, because even if he cannot achieve immortality, then for him death is absolutely normal. And while he is alive, he will try to become stronger and do everything to develop his abilities as a cultivator. Suddenly, the lady begins to get angry because the main character is too careless about his life. Even knowing that he could die, he does not try to make even more efforts to develop the abilities of a cultivator, and she is sure that the boy is still shirking his training. But the boy just smiles broadly and says that the only reason he can postpone training is when his mentor needs his help. These words shock the girl, and she cannot understand why the main character treats her so well. Seeing that the girl blushed again, he approaches her face as close as possible and asks if everything is okay. Maybe she is sick. But in response, the lady simply hits the boy right on the head with her fist and tells him not to dare say such words to her, because she was born in the era of the Golden Core and she is already more than 100 years old. A cold simply cannot defeat her. After dinner, the girl decides to get down to business and tells him that in a month there will be a clan competition. The main character must be ready to take part. But when he heard about the competition, he was clearly in shock. He is afraid that he will not be able to bring much results in the competition because his QI level is still incredibly weak. In any case, he is not interested in the rewards that can be obtained for the competition. It is better for him to wait until he reaches the Kuai purification level. The most important thing is that one should not lose experience. Everything else was not so important for the boy, but the lady still continued to look at him strangely. But she says that the reward for this competition will be the very thing that our boy needs, and the lady thinks Lu Chuan should at least try before he just gives up. Suddenly, a system appears in front of him that gives him a new task. The main character must win the competition, and the first stage will be registration. The reward for this task was unknown, but the system said that it would depend only on the boy's abilities. The main character understands that the system has finally come to life, and the boy happily informs his mentor that he will now participate in the tests. But the lady was surprised because a couple of minutes ago he said that he was not going to take part because it was meaningless for him. The boy began to declare that he was the best student of the clan, and only he was able to get the main prize. But only the girl said that he was the only student who remained in the clan. In fact, the main character was glad that the system had come to life, and now he would be able to advance in his abilities in the tournament. Madame begins to give a motivational speech about how the main character cannot lose, because he is her best student she ever had. He simply cannot let his mistress down. The boy immediately receives an incredible surge of energy and tells his mentor that he will never lose because he now has the 4th level of chi purification, and he will show them who the daddy is. The lady warns her student that he will have to sweat a lot in order to prepare for the tournament, and therefore he cannot sit idly by. After the girl flies away, she becomes as serious as possible and swears that she will definitely help Lu Chuan advance in his cultivation skills. The actions are postponed to the next day, and the main character received a notification from the system that it is time to receive welcome bonuses. The boy happily presses the button to receive the coveted gift. Suddenly he gets an item that belongs to the highest attribute, and of course he is very happy about it because now he can become stronger. We can say that it is good that the hero received an item of such a level, because all the attributes are taken from the reserves of the Lanyu clan. We can say that he just received an S-class attribute. Now our boy has received a new ability, because with the help of this item he can create various illusions and disguise himself. Considering that the main character is cultivating quite slowly, this item will obviously be useful to him, because now he will be able to create high-level illusions. Now Lu Chuan thinks that rivals who are lower than him in level are not a hindrance to him, and he begins to regret that the lady is not around now. If she knew this, she would definitely stop worrying about him. Meanwhile, the elder came to the temple on a high mountain. She was met at the entrance and asked to wait until they announced her arrival, but she said that there was no need for this because she herself would tell everything. Entering the temple, she is immediately greeted by a girl with white hair and asks the reason for her visit. Did she really come again because of her loser student? This lady was the head of Baikao Peak, named Fang Hongwen. The ladies sit down at the table to drink tea and discuss the main character. The girl with green hair has long told her that there is absolutely nothing special about her student. Despite the fact that he is good in medicine and alchemy, he will never be able to become a worthy successor. But suddenly our lady just starts crying and says that she believes her, but she just can't understand how she should change this. The main character took the magic pill that she gave him, but it also could not strengthen his cultivator skills. Perhaps there must be some special reason why the main character is simply not able to become stronger. The girl simply slapped herself on the forehead, saying that the madam did everything completely wrong. This magic pill is a real treasure that can elevate the skills of an ordinary cultivator to an incredible level. But all the madam did was give it to her disciple. Suddenly our mistress simply grabs her hands, and with a sparkle in her eyes asks that little sister Hongwen prepare a special potion that will definitely be able to help our main character. He is completely sure that she will be able to do it. But suddenly she tells our mistress that she values her student too much, because the cultivation of immortality means that people will have to go against their fate, and if she constantly helps, then she herself will fly from heaven. Although the girl herself understood this, she became too attached to her student and simply could not look at how he tried, but could not develop his real abilities. After this, Our Lady declares that she does not want Lu Chuan to live such a terrible and short life, and asks her friend to come up with a way to help the main character. Seeing the girl's incredibly cute face, she simply couldn't resist because she literally made the face of the cat from Shrek. She warns the lady that if she just gives the student one more pill, she will be offended by her. But the lady clearly didn't hear her anymore because there was a wound that her hope is still alive. They both went out to the balcony to discuss the problem in more detail. Although our main character is progressing slowly in cultivation skills, he certainly cannot be called useless because he was still able to reach the 4th level of chi purification, which means that even that pill bore fruit for him, albeit imperceptibly. Our lady is surprised by her friend's words but cannot understand what she really means. But the girl with green hair begins to build a theory that in fact, the main character's abilities are not so bad, and in fact he is simply hiding his real strength. The lady could not believe the words of her friend, because she constantly lives with him and would definitely have noticed changes in his strength. But the lady with green hair thinks that a cultivator of this era cannot develop so slowly. And besides, the pill did not have a full effect on him. At least that means he's definitely hiding something. But from these words, the mistress begins to worry even more, because all this time she has been trying to understand what kind of strange things are happening to the boy. Just as she was about to talk about the last remaining reason, suddenly her assistant appeared behind her and did not allow some girl to pass. She said that she urgently needed to meet with the owner of this temple. It turns out to be a girl with red hair named Yu Ling Zhao, who came with her student, but no one could understand the purpose of her visit. Her assistant asks for forgiveness, but she simply could not stop this girl. But the girl with green hair says that there is nothing wrong with this because the guests have already entered the temple territory. The friends begin to whisper among themselves while the guys in the background decided to make a scandal. This girl with red hair was incredibly famous for having mastered fencing skills in just 2 years and is one of the strongest students of her clan. Our lady thought of inviting her to dinner, but the girl with green hair, she couldn't believe that she was already hungry. Suddenly, the guest begins to throw a tantrum because no one is listening to her, and our two friends immediately realized that the lady was clearly not a pleasant person. Suddenly, her assistant turns to the lady of this temple and says that they came here to ask for a pill that can restore people from wounds. She immediately touches the forehead of the girl with gray hair and asks what happened to her. She tells her the story of how today she went to get her new sword and ran into trouble along the way. She decided to take a closer look at the weapon that the girl was holding with her and realized that this sword was familiar to her. It was a blade of icy rain. The Lanyu clan has existed for more than 1,000 years, and during this time in its history, there was only one known woman. This story happened 200 years ago when the clan was attacked. That girl defeated many enemies in that battle, but at the same time, her further cultivation was at stake. She is a legend for many generations, who is known not only for her personality, but also for her special weapon, the blade of icy rain, and the name of that girl is Yu Xuan. She couldn't even think that after 200 years, this blade would be able to recognize someone as its owner, because this is one of the most complex blades that exist in their clan. The girl in red says that recognizing the blade is not enough, and the boy has yet to master such a complex weapon. And while our mistress laughed at her friend, she thought what was wrong with her student. The lady was clearly glad that she became her student, because the mentor believes that one day she will be able to glorify their clan. Suddenly, she decides to turn to Our Lady, because she is also the most influential person in her clan, and now she can try to take the sword for herself. But the girl just smiled and said that of course she could try, but she didn't want to do it at all. This angers the girl with red hair, and she thinks that she just has something to hide, or she was just afraid that she couldn't. Suddenly, the student asks her mentor to be silent for a bit, because Shuang is trying to talk to them. She could not understand who Shuang is. But the student explains to her that an ancient spirit lives in the sword and is trying to contact them right now. Realizing that there is someone's soul in the sword, she demands that this damned ghost quickly come out of the sword and talk to her personally, because he dared to harm her only student. Suddenly, the lady of the temple reminds her why they actually came here. The girl remembers that they need recovery pills and thinks that she will deal with the spirit of the sword a little later, but now she needs to pull herself together. The girl with green hair thinks that with this sword, everything is really not as simple as it seems at first glance. She remembers that it seems that the girl did not have any special problems with taking medicine, but the components for making it were very rare. Madame in the red robe says that it won't be a big problem for them to get the necessary ingredients, because they can get everything they need because they have Mr. Beast's fortune. She thanks the lady of the temple for helping them, but after she looked at the receipt, she realized that she would have to reduce the expenses a little to cover this expense. The girlfriends looked at these two as they were indignant at the too high price for medicine, but there was nothing to be done. They themselves agreed to such conditions. The girl with green hair immediately began to scold her friend because she laughs at the problems of others when she is not able to deal with her own. Suddenly, the owner of this temple says that in fact, her problem can be completely solvable, which greatly surprises her friend. It turns out that the girl with red hair had been eavesdropping on their conversation all this time and couldn't believe that she so easily agreed to help her and took a huge amount of money from her. She curses Liu Muan and says that it was very mean of her. Meanwhile, our main character tried to train his alchemy skills and just had time to level up 1 level. He remembers the pills that the lady asked him to take and cannot remember their names. Suddenly, he comes to the realization that the pill is called the transformation pill. It was incredibly valuable. and he is amazed that he did not think of eating it earlier before training. Having eaten the pill, he thinks that after he reaches the 5th level in alchemy, the main character will definitely begin to help his mistress in everything possible. Meanwhile, Our Lady was still in shock after learning that there was still a way to help Lu Chuan become a cultivator. She had heard about the strange Yaowen clan who could help with this problem, but they were too reserved and tried not to be particularly holy in public, so they wouldn't even be able to come to them. In such cases, they simply have no other choice, and a friend says that the clan conference will be their last chance to save her poor student. The lady tells her that this plan should work, but before that, she asks how she likes her medical abilities. The brunette immediately begins to praise her and says that her abilities are clearly the best on the continent. The girl asks that she not praise her so much, because her talents clearly do not reach those of real masters. She remembers the Yaowen clan and says that she still has a long way to go in terms of their skill, because they are simply the best in their field. Night had already fallen, but the two girls still continued the conversation. Our mistress was worried that if even the strongest clan could not help them, then she simply did not know what to do. But her friend tried to calm her down, saying that they were the strongest in the whole country and for sure can help them solve the problem. Just now they will be able to test the new pill that she prepared, since even the transformation pill could not affect him. She immediately decides to go to the head of the council so that he can help her gather members of the Yaowen clan, but her friend tries to stop her, saying that it is too late and she may be scolded for this. He suggests that the girlfriends rest today, and tomorrow they will go together to gather advice. Our Lady agrees but warns that they must go to the council tomorrow. The girl with green hair asks her to spend a little time with her because they haven't kept secrets for so long. Meanwhile, our main character was standing on some mountain because his next task was to admire the moon for a certain time. Finally, the system informs him that the task has been completed and the hero's experience has been received. He also receives some kind of hourly increase as a reward. The main character calls on that same scroll and thinks that now, with his new abilities, his training will become much more effective. Having received enough energy, the boy seriously decides that the moment has finally come for him to use that special high-level technique. After this, a strange aura begins to appear around the boy. It was the same key energy that he finally managed to release. But the main character understood perfectly well that if he continued in the same spirit, the changes in his body would become too noticeable, and then there would be many problems. He thinks that even the lady herself, who was born in the era of the Golden Core, did not make such rapid progress as he did. The method of cultivation that our boy decided to master is divided into 3 stages, and in each of them he receives different perceptions of the world. With each level of cultivation, serious changes will occur, and it seems to him that now he just needs to move to another stage. There are only 30 days left before the clan conference, and our boy is worried that it was already night and his mentor never returned home. While the main character was wondering where his mentor was disappearing, the next day had already arrived and both friends came to the head of the clan to ask for help. He was clearly angry with them. Doesn't the girl understand that he is a very busy person, and she just breaks into his palace with requests for help? It was the head of the clan named Zhang Yufeng. He reports that he has neither the time nor the opportunity to deal with the problems of this damned girl. Suddenly, the girl starts to get angry because she can't understand why this boring old guy can't at least try to help them. The mustachioed man simply shouts that her request was too frivolous. Our mistress says that she did not know that he had so much to do, and therefore she decides to go to the belts all alone. Her friend cannot understand why she gives up so easily, because she vowed to help Lu Chuan with all her might. But the brunette says that she tried, but the old man turned out to be too stubborn. Now she is going to act on her own without anyone's help. The old man is angry because our mistress gave her student an incredibly valuable tablet, but if she doesn't stop behaving so brazenly, then she will have a lot of problems. In response to this, the brunette says that she is capable of making decisions on her own. The man was simply shocked by such audacity because the girl decided to waste her life on a useless student. Why doesn't she just leave him and start developing her own abilities? But Our Lady turns out to be not a coward and tells this old man that she could easily overcome the period of the Golden Core and enter a new stage of cultivation. Of course, these words anger the gentleman even more. In the end, he came to terms with the fact that the girl cannot be stopped and warns her that in the clan where she is going there are several rules. One of them is not to save others, and what's even worse is if the girl accidentally helps the enemy of that clan. And the worst thing is that he does not help those who can no longer be saved. Finally, the girl says that everything is just fine, because she will not only be able to talk with the right clan, but also remain in her position. The old man is already tired of listening to this lady, so he asks that she no longer get in the way under his feet. The friend looked at her with a smile, because she turns out to be not such a godly dandelion as she seems at first glance. It always seemed to her that she carried only goodness within herself. But when it comes to her goals, she is ready to go to victory. It seems that the lady with green hair is daydreaming a little, and the owner of the temple asks why the hell she is still here. Doesn't she have her own business? After the two friends left the hall, he shouts for whoever is hiding in this room to quickly come out and show himself to him. Suddenly, the same lady with red hair appears. It turns out she has been watching them all this time and, completely ignoring the master, she understands that our madam came here for the sake of her student. The old man notices that the girl speaks in a very angry tone, apparently that she simply hates the brunette student. But she just makes a dissatisfied face and says that he is not her student, so she cannot be dissatisfied with him. She does not even know who he is and what he is like. In such cases, the mustachioed man begins to wonder why the hell she then organized an entire spy operation in order to observe people about whom she does not care at all. The girl with red hair begins to threaten the gentleman because he just accused her of being a spy and she actually came here to talk to him. He was clearly not pleased that the girl was now trying to tear off his cheek, and the guy wanted to ask what she thought about the Yaowen clan. She herself doesn't really know anything, but as a child, her father told her that the ruler of that clan himself consists of various medicines and potions and also has incredible strength. It should be assumed that he has long surpassed the era of the Golden Core. The gentleman was simply shocked because he himself managed to achieve only the middle stage of transformation. But then there is still a higher stage, and only then the transition to a new level. The girl heard that a new elder appeared in that clan, who is not inferior in strength to the head of the clan, and he is incredibly strong. If they managed to invite this elder, then they would be able to help Lu Chuan with his mediocre level of cultivation. The guy with the mustache decides to ask if the girl really thinks that the main character is actually just developing slowly, but she has been watching Lu Chuan all the time, and in the 2 years after the lady accepted him as a student, he has made minor progress. The main character is slowly absorbing energy but has good talent. The mustachioed dude was simply in shock, because the girl had been watching the boy for all these 2 years, and the lady was angry with our mistress because she warned her that Lu Chuan did not have a special talent, so she also gave him a valuable pill, which only led to the opposite effect. The gentleman does not understand what she is going to do now. Does she really want to help them? But the girl with red hair is not going to help Liu Muan's pitiful students. Besides, she herself needs to prepare her student for the tournament. In such cases, the owner of this temple wants to know where the lady is going, and she begins to get angry. Does the master really think that she leads such a carefree life? She still has many things to do, so it's time for her to go. She simply jumps off this mountain, saying goodbye that this student is still not as bad as they think. If they can talk to the elder of the Yaowen clan, then they can solve their problem. After which the lady simply flies away at the speed of the flash, and the guy who remains thinks that she says one thing and does something completely different. A whole week has already passed, and the system reports that after long training he managed to increase his level. He is amazed that in just 7 days he managed to increase the level of fantasy of emptiness. Lu Chuan remembers his mentor and tries to understand where she has been disappearing all these days. He wants her to be here now and watch him improve his abilities before the tournament. The main character sits and carves a figurine of his mistress from wood, and the system says that the boy has completed the next task, practiced his craft and gained even more experience. He expects that the girl did not go for a new pill for him. He thinks that the mentor communicated quite closely with representatives of Baikao Peak, and he wants to ask her in detail about them. Suddenly, some kind of thing lands in front of him and leaves a huge cloud of dust. It turns out that this is a mentor who has finally returned to her student. He was wondering where the girl had been all these days, and wanted to hear the story in great detail. She tells how she traveled around the country to visit the heads of other clans. She didn't have much time, and therefore she couldn't even leave a note. But the main character worries that she arranged this trip because of him. Mrs. Liu Muan says that she managed to find out one way that can definitely help the main character reach a completely different level of cultivation. But he saw the tired look of the girl and vowed that when he brings the fantasy of emptiness to the ideal, he will begin to help her with everything. The boy wants to tell her that he has made huge progress in his training, but immediately shuts his mouth because the girl shouldn't know about this, or she will understand that he has been deceiving her all this time and is traumatizing her in this way. The lady simply smiles at her student and says that she is very tired and would like to rest a little. She left, and Lu Chuan was upset that he couldn't tell the girl the truth, and she had to suffer because of him. Evening came and a lot of delicious dishes appeared on the table, which the main character had prepared. Liu Muan was simply shocked that the boy managed to cook it all so quickly. While eating food, she praised Lu Chuan, saying that his skill was getting better and better every time, and he was only glad that his mentor was pleased with his success. Suddenly, he finally makes up his mind and tells the girl that in fact, he practices not only in cooking, but also in cultivation. The lady almost choked on such news. He activates his aura, and the girl understands that the main character managed to reach the 5th level of ki purification. He has been training a lot lately, and hopes that he will soon be able to move to the next stage of development. She asks him to continue, but then starts laughing a little at the boy because he doesn't control his breathing so well, a real 5th rank of ki purification. The main character asks her not to laugh ahead of time, because he has a premonition that the main character will soon make an incredible breakthrough in his cultivation skills. And the lady was shocked that the boy has premonitions about this. He thinks that the pills that his mentor gave him still showed their effect, and the accumulation effect worked, which is why he was able to exceed his limits. The lady did not understand what her student meant by the accumulation effect. Perhaps those pills had a delayed effect and only worked during his training. The lady was glad that her student was making progress, and therefore decided to go with him to the mountain so that the chief elder could examine him. But the main character understood that if his fantasies of emptiness were revealed, then he would have a hard time, and he simply could not hide his abilities from the elder. The boy says that he is not going to go to the mountain, and thinks that it would be better for him not to go to that mountain because he is afraid of not meeting the expectations of others. The girl thinks that to some extent he may be right. The lady agrees not to send the main character to the mountain, but asks that the boy immediately inform her if any changes suddenly begin to occur in his abilities. Night has come, and Lu Chuan decides to demonstrate his culinary skills again. He asks the lady to try the next dish that she likes. In the next frame, we are shown a huge flying ship that hovered over the city, and the entire population looked at it. The people who were on that ship were surprised that this was the Lanyu clan, because this peak in its territory was no different in size from the size of their clan. Suddenly, we are shown a mustachioed old man named Chi Siwan. He was one of the 5 great elders who ruled the clan. He proudly reports that their clan occupies the most extensive territory compared to other clans. But even despite his size, his species will never be able to compare with the species of their clan. The dudes in the background began to assent, saying that there is no better thing in the world than the Lingyi clan. He notices a huge crowd of people from below and wants to find out who they are. They explain to him that most of them are ordinary mortals who can only dream of gaining immortality. They were both surprised that so many people had gathered there, but they immediately began to mock them because none of them would ever be able to advance in the knowledge of cultivation to gain immortality. All this time, there was some guy sitting on top of the ship who was mocking these two. It's better not to say that they can't do something. This crazy guy just sticks out his huge tongue and says that he's pretty hungry. It's time for him to go hunting. We are shown a guy in a hat whose name was Xu Zhen. He was the elder of the peak and the head of the Lanyu clan. He thought that there were still 2 days left before the clan competition, but everyone else started arriving too early. The mustachioed dude slowly walked off his ship, saying that he was just curious to know if there were any interesting treasures in this city, which made the guy in the hat very amused. Those 2 guys in hoods looked around and saw a mountain of blades in the distance, and some guy suddenly jumps and lands right in front of them. It was a disciple of this place named Duan Hai. He tells them the story that this place was created by a great ancestor who left behind a blade-shaped mountain, which was later renamed Banyu Peak in honor of Mr. Yu Ban. The bald guy continued to tell them all the stories of this place, and the guy in the hat felt ashamed of the behavior of his student. But the guy with the mustache asks him not to worry about this, because young people need to communicate with each other. The bald dude noticed that the guy was looking too closely at the mountain and thought that he had some questions, but in fact he was just interested in admiring the power of their ancestors, and he regrets that he was not born at the time when the great power arose. This guy's name is Zhou Yutian, and he had heard that there was a real genius in their clan and he wanted to meet him to test his true strength. The guys who were behind him had also heard that Brother Duan was a real genius and asked him to introduce them. He just asked for forgiveness from his new friends, but unfortunately he won't be able to introduce them since he doesn't know this man himself. The guys in the hoods also thought that it would be wrong to break into the genius's room and disturb him once again. The bald guy says that although he can't arrange a personal meeting with them, he can put in a good word for them, but he can't give any guarantees. In response, the guy with red hair says that he's going to stay in this city, so he hopes that he'll still be able to see each other with a real genius. He swears to his new friends that he will do everything possible to arrange a meeting with the real genius of this place, and the guys thank him for this. While he was trying to tell the little kids about the history of this city, the blindfolded guy began to think about where the real master of this country might be hiding. His sword was already sufficiently saturated with ki energy, and he could not wait to quickly go into a worthy battle. The action moves to that mustachioed old man who informs everyone who has gathered. He invited them here to discuss the upcoming opening of a secret kingdom. He says that for a long time they defended their lands behind the gates, but now the time has come to open them, because soon the heavenly gates will open into which only holders of the rank of the Golden Core will be able to enter. This year he bears most of the responsibility, but they all must show patience and save all treasures and resources. This old man's name is Gu Hong, and he wants to find out something from the old man. Is he really going to give the sacred beads as a reward for winning the test? After all, these beads were given to them by the very first head, and they contain all the great achievements that have never appeared before. He thinks that only the heads can dispose of such value, but he just laughed and said that only spiritual value was preserved in them. Their ancestor was the greatest swordsman, and they were clearly far from his level of swordsmanship. Suddenly, the old man began to get nervous, because among the current generation there is hardly a worthy swordsman, but the girl with red hair says that no one can compare with her student in sword skills. Suddenly, the blonde makes a statement saying that taking the beads as the main reward was too hasty a decision, because the transfer of spiritual energy could simply be interrupted. But the lady with red hair tells them not to be so stupid, and to have better faith in her student, of course. At the sight of such a formidable woman, both guys immediately close their mouths. Usagi says that there is no need to worry too much about the beads, and the girl tells him that there is no one more worthy than her student to take possession of such a powerful artifact. Realizing that the girl is not his opponent, he says that the student of the girl with red hair is simply incredible, and raises his glass to wish her a clean and easy victory. She says that she does not need his wishes because she already knows that victory will be hers, and the mustachioed old man says that he is not going to change his decision about the spiritual beads because representatives of the Lingi clan have already arrived on their territory. He requests that all those gathered in this hall fulfill their duties strictly during the visiting period. After the meeting, the head clearly got nervous and asked why the girl forced him to have his beads as a prize for winning. He is worried that his student will be able to win, and he will then be responsible for this. But the girl asks him not to worry because her student is simply not capable of losing like that weaklings. Her student gets into a cool pose with her katana, and she asks the guy not to worry about her because she will definitely win this damn tournament. Moreover, this girl already had an average level of laying the foundations, so all the other students of other masters simply could not reach her level. In this case, the elder will no longer question her, but the girl still has questions about the belts. But after the girl heard silence in response, she realized that this damn man had not even begun to collect information, after which she decided to pull out all his long hair. Meanwhile, that bald student continued to show the other guys the local beauty, and they thought that the peak was incredibly beautiful. Suddenly, he turns to Brother Joe and thinks that he has already noticed this place for a long time. In fact, he was just looking for a suitable place to have a good rest, but he could not even think that such views would open from here. The boys were simply shocked by this place and could not understand why no one had built a huge mansion here yet, but the bald guy says that only one aunt lives here in a small house. The boys decide that they need to quickly head to that house in order to say hello to that woman, but the bald student tries to stop them because they are not allowed to enter that territory. The guys can't understand why they can't get into that territory, but the dude tells them that there are a huge number of traps installed in that house because the woman doesn't want anyone to come to her. If the guys go to her, most likely they will become as bald as and himself. Such a tragic story even made the bald man cry, but Brother Joe found it very interesting and decided to go there. He asks that no one worry about him because he just arrived in this place to meet with different clans and fight with the strongest representatives. The guys immediately fell under his influence and also decided to fight, and only the bald monk tried to stop these idiots from terrible plan. He warns them that he will wait for them here for 1 hour, and if they do not return, he will simply go to the elder. And in the meantime, another warrior has arrived at the tournament. It turns out that this is our main character, who was trying to better hear the terrible screams from the neighboring mountain. Using his new ability, the boy created a playing board on which many pieces were placed. Each of them was a separate character. Lu Chuan thought that these guys were really acting too arrogantly. He doesn't think of them as his potential opponents and intends to try out his new cultivation formation skills on them. The main character is also not going to let these idiots go just like that. He just needs to test a few new abilities on them. After that, he uses an ability called a stealth flag and says that it's time to give them some new gifts. While they were just calmly walking, our main character says that from the moment he entered the game, His illusion abilities were divided into several parts. The first was a mark that our boy could leave on the floor, and after the enemy comes into contact with it, he immediately falls into an endless chain of illusions, which consists of 4 main elements. He begins to rejoice because the dudes ended up in one of the most terrible formations that he created, but still he managed to notice that not all of them were weaklings. Among them, there were also very worthy representatives of their clans. The main character decides to try a few more tricks, and if he succeeds in his plan, then that guy will definitely have a hard time. Meanwhile, that guy in the hat thought that he was far from in the best situation, and now he needs to come up with a plan to get out of here. But he fails to do this because the main character uses a tsunami on him and simply begins to drown in the water. He tries to convince himself that all this is an illusion, but this does not help him. Suddenly, on the verge of death, he decides to use his powers and charging the sword with ki energy simply cuts the huge wave that Lu Chuan created. But everything turns out to be not so simple, because the guy immediately uses a new wave. This time there were a huge number of jellyfish in this water. In addition to the usual sea creatures, a huge water dragon appears, and at that moment Brother Joe realizes that he is in a very difficult situation. Meanwhile, the bald monk sat on the mountain and listened to all these terrible screams, thinking that he had already warned them. Just last week, there were several more brave souls as they and those guys also paid for entering the forbidden territory. Suddenly, he heard strange cries that Brother Duan's death was too tragic, and he literally starts crying because of it. But in fact, he was just holding a log with a picture of a face in his arms and thinking that it was Duan. He asked him for forgiveness. Because if he had only known that everything would end like this, he would never have dragged him into the water. The bald guy saw all this and understood perfectly well that he urgently needed to intervene, because if this continued in the same spirit, the boy simply would not be able to distinguish reality from illusion. Suddenly, he just suddenly jumps off the mountain shouting that his name is Duan Hai. He was accompanying the disciples of the Linga clan on an excursion, when suddenly they all fell under the influence of an illusion at once. He asks for help in disbanding the system because he wants to help his new friends as quickly as possible. But looking in front of him, he understands that in such a situation only the elders can help him. He will have to turn to them, but he swears that this will be the first and last time. Suddenly, an unknown force simply stops all this terrible madness, and now his friends can finally be free. The guys were simply shocked that they had just found themselves at the bottom of the ocean with a huge water dragon, and they said that they would never swim in the sea again. But the bald man tried to explain to them that they were under the influence of a strong illusion, and he had to turn to one person to break the spell. Suddenly, the boy who was mourning the dead monk runs up to him and begins to hug him, saying that he is very glad that Brother Duan did not die in that battle with the dragon. He does not even let the monk explain that it was all just an illusion. Brother Joe says that he is extremely impressed by this level of control of the formation, because he did not even understand how he ended up in the illusion. The person who used the technique is clearly strong because he was unable to distinguish reality from the fantasy world. He tried to destroy the territory of illusion, but he never managed to do this until he revealed his true identity and used the sword in which his true power was hidden. The guy talks about how today he managed to visit the legendary peak and got into the territory of illusions from which he could not get out. Doesn't he still deserve a personal meeting with the elder? But the little guy asks Brother Joe to stop a little because they fell into a trap, just because they violated the territory. It's better not to disturb the lady anymore today and just leave. Suddenly he makes the face of a real Sigma and looks angrily at the boy. He was simply in shock because Joe changed almost instantly. The boy couldn't understand what was happening to the guy with red hair, but he said that he was just tired and would probably go back first. They couldn't understand what the hell just happened to that guy and thought that he just didn't get enough sleep. But the monk says that he will never mess with the people from Xiaozu Peak again. But in fact, Brother Joe was terribly angry with himself because all his life he considered himself a hunter. But today he lost to his own prey. For him, it was a real shame. Meanwhile, our main character was still watching the angry face of the guy with red hair and laughing at him. The boy thought that Brother Joe is a rather mysterious character who definitely has some secrets from him, but they don't concern him yet. Suddenly, the guy notices that a new piece has appeared on the board and begins to rejoice because it was the piece of his mentor. It's like a comet lands on someone's ship and that someone recognizes her. 2 days have already passed since the last chapter, and the actions are transferred to the place where the tournament of all clans was held. Representatives of the clans had just appeared on the balcony, and Chi Siuan asked if there were students in this tournament who were worthy of his attention. They had already told him about one. It was a bald guy named Duan Hai. The guy was crying because his student only a few days ago managed to reveal his true potential, But the fact that he had already managed to get into the top 16 participants made him very happy. The fat man remembers that it was he who asked his students to conduct an excursion, but it seems he was prevented. He thinks that this disciple from Xiaozhu Peak will become a dark horse in their tournament, and now all attention will be attached to him. But someone thought that this guy is very secretive, and therefore he will not be so interesting to watch. The fat man could not understand what his friend meant, but the guy in the yellow robe said that he had heard very well that another strong warrior should take part in the tournament. Let them wait a little and see for themselves. While other participants fought in the ring, he tried to understand what the expression dark horse really meant to him. He believed that the new participant would become not just a dark horse, but a real abyss that no one could understand. And meanwhile, our main character put on a disguise and tried to figure out his system. His first task at this tournament was to register to participate. As a reward, he received a book of skills and experience and a bunch of reinforcement points. Lu Chuan thought that he urgently needed to win the blade competition. The system gave him the task of winning the clan competition, but the reward was unknown. There was only a note that this was a key task, and therefore his reward would depend on how far the main character could advance. The boy is surprised and understands that this condition will be very difficult. Since this is a key task, he will only have one attempt to complete it because he will not be able to simply restart the level again. In any case, it doesn't matter to him, but he is still worried that his 8th level may not be enough to defeat all the enemies in this tournament. But there is nowhere to go. He will still have to try. The kids were simply shocked and asked in surprise if everyone in their clan really starts their battles so epically. But the fat man said that there was absolutely nothing surprising in this, because it was about entering a secret kingdom in which the legacy of the most ancient ancestor would lie. The boy asks the gentleman to repeat his words about the reward, but he understands that he just said too much and therefore begins to deny so as not to burn the truth. Our main character looked around and thought that there were too many people here today. Spiritual beads are of course a very good item, but unfortunately they won't help the boy at all. He looked around and felt the energy coming from Brother Joe. It was so erratic that he thought that he was using some kind of demonic techniques. The main character decides to look around a little to see if others notice his strange energy, because he only recently received his new power. Suddenly, the little guy calls the gentleman and says that some strange things are starting to happen in the ring right during the battle. He thought that the same disciple from Xiaozhu Peak was doing this, and this was the technique of his formation. But the main character felt ashamed that he was suspected of such a thing. The elder said that despite the fact that he had been living at this peak for a long time, he had never met this student. And meanwhile, another fight ended in the ring, and the guy with a pigtail emerged victorious. The guy just fell to his knees and thought that it was too rude towards his student, and the little kid talked about Brother Duan, because it was he who saved them from that strange trap with illusions. Behind them all this time stood Brother Joe, who was very grateful to the guy for saving them from that trap, because if it weren't for him, the guy with red hair would have gone to the next world long ago. Suddenly, the elder says that he has heard a lot about that student from Xiaozhu Peak. He remembers that for 2 years he remained at the same level of ki purification, just a real black sheep of his clan. The main character felt ashamed that they were talking about him like that, because they don't yet know that he was able to strengthen his abilities. The gentleman says that apparently he still did not dare to come and take part in the tournament, and no one could believe it because many wanted to meet him but were disappointed that he was not there. Suddenly someone appears behind them and asks if they are talking about Lu Chuan. He knows him very well. It was some guy with red hair named Liu Xuji. He talks about how our main character consumes a huge amount of resources, but he never managed to achieve any results. He thinks that the boy is completely incapable of anything, and if not, his mentor would have kicked him out of the clan long ago. Suddenly he comes up and simply hugs the boy by the shoulder, but the elder cannot understand what kind of strange guy he is. The red-haired guy continues to talk about how Lu Chuan was given a lot of different pills that were supposed to pump up his cultivation skills, but he never achieved any results. Apparently, he will have to find himself a wife so as not to stay too long in their clan. The main character responds, he just laughs so as not to show his own fear. Suddenly, some guy says that he heard a story about how Lu Chuan got into trouble, from which Elder Lu helped him get out. It was in that battle that the guy damaged his channels, and now simply cannot use cultivation. But the red-haired dude still tries to convince the elder that there is no need to justify the boy's wastefulness, and he is asked not to talk again, so as not to create noise. Suddenly, this guy turns to the main character and says that there is no need to worry about this again, and asks him why his face looks so terribly familiar, and in the meantime, the next fight was announced. Lu Chuan understands that it is his turn to show himself in the ring, and the guy with red hair was simply in shock when he realized that that loser had been hiding under the hood all this time. The gentleman was also shocked that Lu Chuan was next to him all this time, but our main character doesn't think much and simply jumps into the ring to his opponent. The opponent happily greets him and says that his name is Li Cheng, and he is the representative of the inner gate. In response, our hero also introduces himself and says that he arrived from Mount Xiaozhu, and Brother Zhou was very happy because he finally waited for our boy to fight. The guy with red hair felt that there wasn't much key energy inside the guy, then why was he so confident in his victory? The gentleman looked at Brother Zhou and thought, why this damn dude looks so terrifying? The opponent tells Lu Chuan that they are from the same clan and therefore should support each other. But despite this, he will not help him, because it is important for him to participate in this tournament, so it's every man for himself. Be that as it may, our main character says that he too recently made a breakthrough in his cultivation abilities, and therefore he invites his clan brother to fight in a fair fight. Everyone was simply shocked when Lu Chuan activated his abilities because they thought that he only had the 4th level of chi purification. Even Brother Zhou became interested in this boy. He began to smile like a real devil, saying that the main character rises to the same level as Lin Yanbing. This is just great for him, and he wants Lu Chuan to enter the secret realm, and there he can deal with him. The opponent was extremely impressed because he thought that the battle would be very boring, but it turns out that his clan comrade was able to achieve great success. Now our main character stands with a satisfied face and asks the guy to attack him with all his might. His opponent was at the 8th stage of ki purification and was also a master who can control ice. He warns Lu Chuan that he is starting to attack and he better get ready. Our boy was also at the 8th stage of ki purification, but he was an ordinary swordsman, so the battle promised to be interesting. His opponent understood that he would have to be especially careful with the swordsman and would have to use much more complex techniques than he had used before. In such cases, he decides to start concentrating on the ice aura, and the entire arena is covered with ice which he can now attack. But our main character is also not going to just stand in one place and, having reflected all the icicles of the guy, is already flying at him with his katana. He uses several more ice techniques, after which our boy has to start dodging around the entire arena so as not to get hit. This idiot shouts at him that the main character only knows how to run away and does not engage in open battle at all. Since this is the case, he decides to slightly limit Lu Chuan's movements and simply seals his legs in an ice prison, restricting his movements. The opponent decides that the main character needs to be finished off as quickly as possible, after which he creates a huge blade that consists entirely of ice. He decided not to stand on ceremony with it and show who is the boss of the rocking chair. Suddenly, the main character simply activates his fencing skill powers and cuts this huge ice sword, and also manages to free himself from the ice prison. The opponent comes down to him and cannot understand what the hell just happened, how Lu Chuan was able to get out because he completely constrained his movements. But our main character is not going to explain anything to him, and simply goes on the attack. The boy realizes that he is moving too fast, and he underestimated Lu Chuan's strength to the fullest. So now he will lose. At the last second, he stops and asks his opponent to surrender. Of course, he accepts this offer and says that he is not at all offended because Brother Lu Chuan turned out to be much stronger than him. The main character was declared the winner of this round, and the crowd began to scream in surprise. Despite the fact that they were both at the 8th level, the difference in their strengths was simply huge, and the main character also thoroughly improved his sword skills before the tournament, so that the opponent simply there was no chance left. The little ones couldn't believe what they just saw, because the boy was supposed to be a master of the formation, but at the last moment he signed up to be a swordsman, and Brother Zhou thought that the main character could be much more useful than he thought. He has quite a lot of abilities, so he can handle him. It will be much more difficult than it seemed. All the elders began to mock the guy in the yellow robe, because he would be against our main character, who would have thought that Elder Lu's student would be able to show such results. It's immediately clear that he is a talented guy. But suddenly the girl with red hair asks them not to rejoice ahead of time, because most likely the boy was just lucky. But what will Mrs. Lu Muan do if the main character never manages to get into the secret kingdom? Is she really going to protect him for the rest of her life? Suddenly, the elder with a black mustache is surprised that she is so rude to the poor boy. Even his mentor was not so harsh, but she actually tries to tell only the truth. They begin to quarrel with each other because quite a lot of time has passed, and the girl with red hair still cannot accept the fact that her strength and the strength of Mrs. Lu Muan are equal. But the girl says that the guy is just stupid and does not understand anything. Still, she hopes that the mistress's efforts will not be in vain, because Mrs. Muan even went to the healer to help the main character, and now he simply cannot let his mentor down. While one of the elders was trying to come to her senses after talking with the lady, she simply sat down near the balcony and waited for Mrs. Muan to come to the tournament. She was sad that her rival would not be able to see the stunning victory of her student. The protagonist's clan brother says that there were a lot of rumors about him all the time, that he was simply not capable of cultivation. But now he sees perfectly well that everyone just wanted to ruin his reputation. But the boy says that he is going to conquer many more goals, so he failed to solve his problems with cultivation, but he completely does not care about any rumors about him. His friend says that he believes in the main character and wants him to achieve great success in the future. But suddenly the system appears with a new notification and interrupts their conversation. The system says that the boy successfully completed the second stage of the test and defeated his opponent. As a reward, he receives some kind of memory fragment and hero experience. His third task will be to enter the top 64 participants and be the last to win this tournament. As a reward, the main character will be able to receive one pass to the secret kingdom, but he still could not understand what kind of memory fragment he was given. Suddenly, this object just flies out at him like a bullet, and the guy begins to have some strange memories. In the memory, he fought against Brother Lu, who suggested that he give up, because with the 8th level of ki purification, he was no match for him. But the main character was not going to give up without a fight, because only victory was important to him. Lu Chuan couldn't believe that he was now seeing himself fighting against the ice guy. After the battle ended, the main character was declared the winner of the round. But that guy needed urgent medical attention. The cherry juice on his clothes was proof of this. Everyone around condemned the boy for the fact that he defeated his opponent so cruelly because he understood that he was initially much stronger than him. They said that the main character simply did not deserve to win the tournament because in the end, he would become a real demon. While the boy was thinking about his opponent, he thought that he initially knew that he could not win, but still got into a fight. And in the background, some guy laughed evilly behind the curtains, after which he began to have strange visions of how demons and various hellish creatures appeared and attacked the clan tournament. But he could not understand what the hell was happening in his memory. He began to imagine his mentor and how he was breaking through the army of demons in order to save her. But all this was completely useless because there were too many of them. The guy eventually covered up his clan brother in order to save his life. But the main character didn't understand why he did this because he was already from the Golden Core period. But in response, the guy only told him to never take his level-up pills again cultivation. The actions returned back to the real world where the main character shouted so that Brother Lu would not go to the next world. But it was all like a nightmare, and Lu Chuan could not believe that these were his memories. Suddenly he turns to his brother, and after seeing the horror asks if the end of the world suddenly happens, then he will help him save the world. Brother Lu, without even thinking for a minute, says that he will undoubtedly help him. But the main character adds the condition that in such cases, he will have to sacrifice his life. In response, the brother simply begins to laugh loudly and says that he needs to think carefully about such a proposal. The main character asks him not to take his words seriously because he asked this out of his own interest and thanks him for his honest answer. The two brothers simply laughed at this situation because Lu Chuan looked too serious, and suddenly in the background, someone called the main character to him. The little ones immediately ran up to him and began to ask. Maybe he remembers them. He remembers very well that these children burst into the territory of his mentor, but unfortunately he did not remember them because there were too many of them. The boy says that then the main character also helped them destroy the formation so that they could survive. But he completely forgot to introduce himself. The little guy's name is Ho Tao, and these are all his brothers and sisters. Our main character asks them for forgiveness for the inconvenience caused, because at that time they did not know each other at all. But the boy had a very mixed impression about these guys, because only one of them was able to destroy the formation. Only Brother Yutian managed to destroy his water illusion. One of them says that he always stood out among all the other students, but Brother Zhou says that he did it on purpose. The little ones begin to make fun of the guy because in fact, he was impressed by the strength of Brother Yutian. And the gray-haired guy thinks that his cultivation skills were very mediocre. If not for careful training, he would never have been able to destroy that powerful formation. But Brother Zhou makes a very scary smile and says that in fact he does not have such great power and got out of that water trap by pure chance. The main character confirms that most likely it was an accident, that the guy with red hair was able to get out of his trap, and if he really understood the formations, he would have easily destroyed his illusions. Despite the fact that Brother Zhou was smiling in front of everyone, inside he was incredibly angry because he had just been publicly humiliated and called a weakling who was unable to get out of even the simplest illusion. The little guys kept praising the main character, saying that he was simply incredible during the test, but he was very modest and said that they were exaggerating too much. But the main character begins to think about what he heard. that if a person can reach the highest level of cultivation, he will receive demonic power and will be able to capture even other people's bodies. Despite the fact that Brother Joe's appearance was no different from a human, his energy was incredibly chaotic and very reminiscent of demonic chi. This did not give our main character peace. Even people close to him begin to feel something is wrong, and Lu Chuan begins to assume that someone is controlling the guy's body, and the real Joe is now in captivity of a demon. Suddenly, Ho Tao draws attention to the ring, telling everyone to look at the next fighter. It was Lin Yanbing. Seeing the girl in the ring, everyone immediately paid attention to her blade of icy rain. Despite the fact that she had been cultivating for only 2 years, the girl had already become the pride of her clan, and she also had excellent fencing skills. Everyone just stood and admired the beautiful girl with a cool weapon, but only the main character read the thoughts of Brother Joe, who thought that the girl would look great in a puddle of cherry juice. The judge warns that despite the fact that this tournament has no time limit, he asks them to finish the fight as quickly as possible, because no one knows their true strength. The dude was the most ordinary gunsmith, and thought that his mentor was now watching him, so he definitely shouldn't give up. In one motion, he pulls out from his cloak a chain at the end of which was a huge metal arm. But the girl is not going to just stand and wait until the attack hits her, and with one blow she knocks off his chain and then goes on the attack. The guy doesn't like the fact that the girl repelled his attack so easily, and therefore decides to subjugate the territory to himself with the help of her chains. But she was still able to dodge each of his attacks. Realizing that the boy is now far from being in the best situation, he begins to yell, after which his aura changes its color. The mentor watched her students fight and couldn't understand why she was given such a weak opponent, or if out of all the participants there wasn't someone stronger. These guys realized that the boy used the ability of a black shield that explodes over time. Things were definitely bad. But the girl is not going to just wait for the explosion to pass through her, so she uses the power of the ice blade and begins to cut everything that stands in her way. The whole crowd was simply in shock because the girl moved at the speed of Sonic. Perhaps she was even stronger than our main character. After the guy's cloak was destroyed, the girl invites him to just accept defeat. He was not in the best condition and simply agreed to her proposal. She came out the winner of this round. They simply could not believe what happened, because the boy spent 2 years studying cultivation, but could not even touch the girl. The mentor came out to console his student, but nothing helped him. She noticed that even though the boy has an incredibly powerful weapon, his skills still leave much to be desired, and it would be better if he went to heal his wounds. The mentor thanked her for her concern. Suddenly, the girl turns and looks intently at our main character, but he can understand what the hell she wants from him. The next chapter begins with the fact that a guy named Duan Wuyan lost in the battle. Everyone was only thinking that if someone collides with that girl in one battle, they will not survive. What is more important in this tournament is strength or luck. The mentor began to experience severe shaking because his student had been training for 10 years but could not even reach the top 64. Is he really so weak that he cannot compete with a subject whose QI purification level is 8? Suddenly, the old man approaches the head of the clan and says that not everyone is happy with the results of the tournament. And what does the chief elder think about this? The old man thinks that the passage to the secret kingdom should not be so simple, and he wants to change the rules of the tournament a little, but that guy begins to dissuade him because his student lost not because of strict rules, but because of that damned girl. The guy in the hat thinks that the rules really need to be changed, because the last time they were changed was about 30 years ago, and from that moment they remained untouchable. The gentleman understands the intentions of the students, because they all want to go to the secret kingdom, but if they start making changes to the rules right now, then the whole tournament may simply get out of their control. Everything may not turn out in their favor. In such cases, the girl with red hair comes up with a brilliant idea, so that those students who lost will fight again with those who entered the top 64, and those who win will receive the right to enter the secret kingdom. But everyone immediately began to say that this was not the best idea because it would be necessary to add additional guards, and it would also take too much time for all the students to fight each other. But she offers an alternative that they select only those students who have passed the foundation era. Those students who entered volume 64 will have to endure 3 rounds, after which they will begin to sum up the results. Suddenly, the head of the clan rises and says that if others have no objections, then this is how they will change the rules. Afterwards, he goes out to the crowd and talks about the fact that the rules of the tournament have been changed. Of course, the crowd was surprised by this, because the rules of the tournament have not changed for a long time. The main character comes to the realization that now he just has to wait for the moment when he can enter the secret kingdom, and he decides to quickly increase his cultivation level so that the chances of victory increase. The boy makes a breakthrough to the 9th level and moves on to a new stage of cultivation. Everyone was shocked because the main character has incredible strength. He tries to justify such a sudden surge of strength by saying that he took too many pills that his mentor gave him, and that's why he is so strong now. But they still started congratulating Lu Chuan on moving to the next level. Brother Joe calls the boy incredibly talented because he so easily managed to pass the next barrier of strength. He definitely won't have any problems in the Secret Kingdom. Although the main character smiles sweetly in his thoughts, he realized that the guy with red hair was planning something wrong because he so badly wants him to get into the Secret Kingdom. Now is just a great moment to catch this idiot in a lie. The day was almost over, and everyone thought that the tournament would soon end for today. The main character suggested that everyone go to Mount Xiaoji to rest, because last time he gave them a far from warm welcome. Just the main character read about a new formation, and he would like to practice. If suddenly someone needs help, they can safely contact him. Everyone immediately became interested in what new formation the boy had read about and asked him to share with them. He begins to tell them about the new formation technique. It was not created to cause damage to opponents. It was created to smooth out the topography of the peak. And in order to enhance the effect of the formation, they need to find its center. Meanwhile, Brother Joe decided to use his techniques to find the center of the formation, and judging by his words, it should be somewhere here. Looking at the table with playing stones, he thought that after one piece finds itself in a disadvantageous position, then another will suffer after it. Be that as it may, in this damned game, someone will definitely have to die. But for him, there was absolutely no point in sitting and coming up with some kind of plan. Joe wanted to quickly try it out in practice. Suddenly, he simply shrinks to the size of a playing piece, and he is going to slightly destroy the existing formation. But the boy thinks that this could become a real test for him. After he saw everything that the main character managed to create, he called him a real genius because now only he can be worthy of seeing all the abilities of Brother Joe. A huge power beam appears in the middle of the board, and he thinks that this game will become much more interesting only after he destroys everything. Suddenly, the figures begin to come to life and turn into some kind of demons, but Brother Joe seems not to be afraid of them at all, but rather flies into battle to quickly destroy this damned formation. After he cut down all the demons, he decided to head towards that pillar of light, but he was unable to inflict enough damage because he was protected by the power of the transformation period. He couldn't believe that Lu Chuan could have such enormous power, and after a huge hand appeared in front of him, he realized that it was time to start acting much more seriously. He decides to use his most powerful technique that only exists during the foundation period, after which he himself turns into a huge demon with long red hair. That huge hand turns out to be the hand of the main character that hit the playing board. It seems that he has a small problem. They say that he misses the main character. The next chapter begins with the fact that we are shown Brother Joe, who is gradually going crazy. It seems that he and the rest of the students practiced demonic techniques, but their practice got out of control. They skillfully maintained the appearance that they remained the same, but at the same time it was clear that in their souls they damned demons. The main character understands that Brother Joe planned to drag him and everyone else into a secret kingdom in order to deal with them. He did this in order to perform a sacrificial ritual for the demons that control him. The boy assumes that all this time he deliberately put a spoke in their wheels, and that Joe's demonic skills are not so simple. The main character had an incredible desire to quickly finish off this freak for everything he had done, but he stopped himself only because the guy could still be useful to them. After looking through his memory, he realized that the fragments of his memories did not contain information about demonic cultivation, so he would need to look for another option in order to expose him. After that, all three began to emerge from the portals. Our main character met them and congratulated each on the successful destruction of the formation. Brother Zuo managed to destroy it before everyone else, after which the others also coped with their test. Unfortunately, the last one to arrive was Brother Joe. It seems that he was a little behind, but he couldn't even remember what just happened to him. The guy with gray hair said that the main character is simply incredible because he managed to create a chess game inside the formation, and in order to destroy it, you need to play the game. Despite the fact that the main character explained everything to them, Brother Joe still could not pass the test, but they could not understand the reason for this. But in response, the guy with red hair just smiles and says that despite the fact that this time he failed to cope with the test, next time he will try much better and will definitely overcome it. In such cases, the boy simply smiles at his new friends and thanks them for being the first to take part in his test. He was very pleased. The action moves to a valley of fog, where a group of hooded people came to some strange cave. The guy was very scared because all the time it seemed to him that a huge number of eyes were looking at him, but at the same time no one was noticeable in the cave. He says that he perfectly understands the fears of his team, but asks them not to give in to panic because most likely it's just a lady walking around the cave and making these sounds, so everything is normal. Suddenly, a beautiful girl with white hair appears, and all the guys in hoods just kneel in front of her because it turns out to be the head of their clan. The guy apologizes for the fact that they took so long to find their mentor, but she calls them stupid garbage and that they were too late. They were too lucky that she now has unfinished business. The mustachioed guy once again apologizes and presents his mistress with a golden seal, saying that they are ready to follow her to the ends of the earth, after which she takes the seal from him, and we are shown a huge blue snake that has been in the very depths of the cave all this time. The action moves back to the tournament, and the guy says that with his level of chi purification, he will never cope against the guys who have reached the level of laying the foundations, so he will not be able to get into the top 64. But the other guy says that he is a real loser, and if he has time to feel sorry for himself, he'd better spend time training. The guy with red hair seemed to be going to finish him off as quickly as possible, but suddenly Tu Hao says that everyone should pay attention to the ring, because now Brother Lee will fight. The guy decided that despite the fact that their boy was incredibly strong, even he could not cope with such a strong opponent. He wanted to see how he would be smashed against the wall as quickly as possible. The dude enters the ring with a huge sword and greets our hero, calling him trash. He can't understand why he's so angry at him, because they're literally seeing each other for the first time in their lives. Our guy asks him not to be so arrogant when communicating with him, but the guy clearly didn't understand such arrogance, because our main character was only at the stage of laying the foundations. Isn't he a little afraid of him? He says that he is going to teach Lu Chuan a lesson in good manners, but the main character again repeats that a guy with a huge sword cannot become a worthy opponent for him, so he cannot count on victory. He decides to tell him a story about how he once had a cat that didn't want to obey his commands, and so he just killed it. So he's just going to do the same thing to the main character as he did to his pet. The girl with red hair thinks that something new has appeared in their competition, but the gentleman thought that this would not harm the competition in any way, especially since he is the best representative of his clan. Suddenly a dude appears who is one of the 5 great owners of the clan. He thought that they were capable of talking their opponent to death. Suddenly the guy with the mustache asks everyone for forgiveness for his student. He should have worked better on his behavior before the tournament. Despite his arrogance, he is still a very kind guy who has never harmed anyone. As soon as he completes his test, he will immediately take care of his upbringing. In any case, the girl says that they have quite enough guards, and after she thinks about the fact that something might happen to Lu Chuan, she begins to laugh evilly. He will immediately run to his mistress like a beaten dog, and will be under her supervision for the rest of his life. After the judge announced the start of the round, this crazy man ordered the main character to simply kneel in front of him and beg him for mercy. Everyone was simply shocked that this idiot used such a powerful technique at the very beginning of the round and wondered whether our main character could defeat such a warrior like him. But the main character only puts on the face of a real gigachad and says that his opponent is simply retarded. If he wants to play so badly, then he will gladly send the poor guy to the next world. Suddenly, the main character just starts using his skills that he learned, and the boy was simply shocked when he saw that Lu Chuan began to use his formation. The opponent began to laugh at him, thinking that the main character decided to use his trump cards to defeat him, but the pitiful formation could not help him defeat such a warrior like him. Suddenly, this crazy guy just throws his sword right at our boy and pierces his body. They immediately ask the judge to stop the fight because the main character was seriously wounded. But that was not the case, because Lu Chuan simply begins to push away this blade with the help of his cultivation, and he fails to pierce it. The man dodged the attack, saying that such a trick would not work on him, and the guy watching was surprised that Lu Chuan built the formation so quickly. One of those watching in surprise noticed how he destroyed the formation, but despite the benefits of the formation, if the difference in strength is too great, it will not be possible to keep the enemy trapped for long. Another guy came up to him. He pointed to the duel between the two, saying that several more new techniques had appeared. The boy noticed that this is already a golden formation. The wind is superimposed on the ground, and as a result, a golden formation appears. Like in the cartoon Avatar, they controlled the elements. The man with a ponytail in charge of the earth soared above him, but he only grinned, saying that he was taking on too much at the stage of chi purification. But he was not afraid, and decided to fight to the last using his powers. He was ready to kill him, but it didn't take him. He just grinned and said that he'll see what happens when his spiritual power runs out. But suddenly he noticed a formation that he thought he had broken long ago. He was extremely surprised by what was happening. Better Chuan pulled out all the formations. Our hero still didn't really understand where he got the 5-element formation from. He took advantage of this and sent a huge number of monsters at him, but such a number was useless. He immediately shouted to Lu Chuan, asking what was wrong with him. He asked why he didn't fight him face to face. Lu Chuan landed with a grin and asked him why he should fight him. Wang Lizhou turned to him, saying that he did not see what was happening to him and that he would soon lose his life. But the boy made a confused face and just said that it could not be that he was about to lose. The man began to scream hysterically that he had broken his formation long ago, but Lu Chuan's face did not even flinch, but simply asked him why he decided so. The guy with white hair immediately realized that all this was thought out from the very beginning. From the very beginning, he pushed him to destroy the formation. But in fact, he did not destroy them because the guy only pretended to be destroyed. In this case, it is not surprising that the formations changed so much. Wang Lizhou found himself trapped by Li Chuan. He was furious that the guy had deceived him. He tore and threw at the boy's grins, but he still said with a grin that now it was the end of him. Li Chuan from Xiaozhu Peak won the battle. His third and main task to enter the top 64 was completed, and the reward was a memory fragment. The man was stunned by the fact that Lu Chuan was so strong, and despite their prejudices, he turned out to be so weak. But he was unhappy with his loss. Due to his aversion to his loss, he decided to attack him from behind. But even so, he could not defeat him, he noticed, and immediately hit him back. The guy was slightly defeated, to the shocked exclamations of outside spectators. Everyone was shocked that he also had the intention of a blade. Some guy shouted that this couldn't happen, because only Lin Yanbing achieved this. Everyone was amazed that he had been pretending to be a weakling all this time. Lu Chuan injured Wang Lizhou right in front of the elder, and I wonder if he will now get away with it. In the end, someone loses and someone wins. The elder realized that Wang Lizhou's skills were mediocre. He said that he would take care of him in the future. The guy finally decided to lie down to rest, but it was not to be. A strange silhouette appeared in front of him. Flames were blazing around this strange silhouette. He extended his hand to our hero, but he immediately realized and set up a force field. He called out to the silhouette, saying that, "I ask you to let me go, or do you still want to fight? Well, fortunately, I am not empty-handed." He called him by name, to which this devilish silhouette replied that Liu Muan is watching you very closely. How did you know my identity? But the guy answered with a smile that it was understandable that everyone wanted to avenge their son, who had suffered such a tremendous defeat, and in the end, you decided to stop by. Wang Yue decided to fight, saying that you are smart, but your brain will not save you from death. He put his hand forward as if right now he would use a technique from Naruto, saying that the Yuan Ying period, he thought he would be able to cope. Well, suddenly this creature used duplication. The guy thought it was him, but no, the energy was different. When he finally realized, he saw his mentor in front of him, but she was clearly unhappy and spoke out about how dare he even dare. Wang Yue was surprised because he thought that she had left, but she returned right now, at the most inopportune moment. She looked at the guy with a smile and said that he held out very well and leave the rest to her. The guy readily agreed, and the girl thought that initially she could suppress Wang Yue with just one movement. But now everything has changed. Most likely this will scare him away, and the only thing left is forward. At the same time, the elder was at the rocky Dumas. He was thinking about where Liu Muan came from, so much arrogance, and why she was not afraid of him. He also had the thought that there could obviously be a Yuanyin period cultivator next to her. Well, you distracted him. Looking up at us, he turned to his son and said that it was time for them to leave, but his son did not understand what was going on. But the elder said that if they fight with her, then everything will end for them here and now. The son immediately understood and agreed with him. They rushed at the speed of light in an unknown direction. One guy watching and wondered if Wang Yue and Wang Lizhou were there. At this time, at the peak of Xiaozhou, the mentor grappled with him in a battle for life and death. The guy watched the fights, believing that his mentor was magnificent. Even though she was in the golden core period, her skills were refined and graceful. In this world, the higher the cultivation period, the greater the gap between the forces. Many cultivators would have given up for a long time. But the mentor has the upper hand. Wang Yue shouted hysterically that he was in the Yuan Ying period, that death was just a matter of time and he would definitely deal with it. He decided to fight with full power and showed his true appearance. He appeared in front of her, and she suddenly realized that he was a bloody soul demon. She was overcome by memories of 2 years ago, where she watched as this demon burned the entire village. She would never forget the tragedy in the Wan family's village. That day, in order to save the boy's life, she had to let the bloody demon soul leave. Remembering all this, she turned to him and said that she never thought that she would meet him again. Lu Chuan didn't really understand, but turned to the mentor and asked if Wang Yue was from the inner gate, but when she heard his name, she was surprised. Seeing that she was distracted, he decided to attack from behind, but the boy managed to warn her to be careful. But the girl, without any problems, simply stops the fiery attack of this damned demon and does not allow him to win. after which the mistress uses her strongest lunar key technique, and the enemy is struck by a huge beam of light. The demon was simply screaming in incredible pain and did not understand how the girl managed to defeat him because she was in the golden core period and he was clearly a step higher. After the demon was already completely defeated, the elder comes running and asks what the hell is going on here, and is surprised that Mrs. Liu also came here. Suddenly he notices a demon who was burning out in his own fire, emitting simply terrible screams.